It's Mike from Distant Hills Touring, and I promised to do a very short review of this diesel heater a long time ago. Anyway, so this is a diesel heater. It's a completely portable unit. It's a unit that we bought off eBay. I think it was around $250, wasn't very expensive. I did a bit of research into it, and it was a bit of it might work, it might not work. Anyway, we've used it for quite a few trips now, and although initially we were going, oh, it's not so choice, but I think now that it is actually working quite well. And the issues that we were having was it was quite smelly and putting fumes into the tent, and I think it was just, as it was brand new, as you often get with a heater, there's a funny smell when you first start using it, and I think that's the case with this thing as well. Anyway, a couple of things. I've done a couple of mods to it. Jen just comes nice and close. So the unit comes completely set up. So you don't need to do any of this stuff, but because I'm pretty particular about things, I couldn't help myself, and so I went off and made a couple of changes. So the whole lid comes off, and that's the unit. So the fuel tank sits on top. I cut up a, heaven forbid, I cut up a beer holder to stop it from rubbing. And if we go around the other side here, Jen just wanders around the other side, you'll see at the front here, I didn't want to rely on the unit here. This turns the unit and controls the unit. I just wanted a complete kill switch, so I put a kill switch on it, and that's what that basically does. I also put an Anderson plug on the end of the cable here. It just came with a cigarette lighter socket, I think, and I want to be able to plug it into the edge of the box here. So the reason it's a bit cumbersome showing you it here, but the reason I'm showing you it here is because this is a new way they've sort of put it together to try to stop and limit the fumes. So this here, if you come around this way, Jen, sorry. This here is the exhaust. So it all happens underneath. The exhaust comes out here, and the air intake is here. And when I had it on the ground, it was sucking some of the exhaust through the air intake and shoving it out through the pipe, which went into the tent. Obviously, that's not ideal. So by putting it up here, it seems like the exhaust drops and goes away and doesn't get sucked into the intake. We also have a carbon monoxide sensor in the tent, because I'm a bit paranoid about it. Carbon monoxide, from my understanding, my reading, is completely, you can't smell it, so you really do have to have a sensor. So if you're going to buy one of these units from eBay for $250, I think they're good, so go off and do it, but make sure you get the sensor and put it in your tent as well. The other thing that we deal with here is we keep the unit away from the tent, and I just bought this cheap ducting. This is a Bunnings thing, and I simply just push that over the top of this outlet nozzle, like that, and I feed it straight into the tent via the zip. So I just got the zip open, and I feed it into the tent that way. So that's how we deal with it. I was reviewing the footage that we had for having a bit of a squiz at the heater system, and I was thinking I probably need to go a little bit more in depth. So I thought I'd just do this at home. Obviously we're not away camping, but it just makes it a little bit more convenient and easier to do it here. So I think I talk about it in the other footage, but this is the box that I made to put it in. So the idea behind it is it's just a way to contain the whole unit, and if there's spillage from fuel, then this actually contains it. So it's just a wooden ply box that I made. I've lined it with bitumen paint, and obviously that'll stop any of the real bad leakages, I suppose, ending in the camper trailer. So I just throw this whole box, holus bolus, into the camper trailer. It's tied down. This is as you see it, so I've just literally just pulled it from the camper trailer. It's tied down by just a simple strap, and then all the bits and pieces that come along with the unit is in here as well. So there's the ducting that I talked about in the original footage. This is the hose that goes on the end, which is the outlet, which gets pushes the heat into the tent via the ducting. The exhaust pipe sits in there too, just a bit of packing. And then I've also got, this is a mount where I mount the carbon monoxide sensor on, and it just clips onto one of the poles inside the tent, so that's why that's in there too. So, the magic of editing, the unit is out of the box now, and I thought I'd just quickly go over some of the external things. So I've just attached the power cord with Velcro onto one of the things here, just to make it nice and easy. I've talked about the Anderson plug on the end, so that's all cool. To fill it is just simply taking the cap off and filling her up. I think there's a 5 litre fuel tank at the top here. I'll pull it open again to show that. And just to assemble the unit, it's quite simple. The exhaust here just clips on underneath, and most of the joints I just push on. So I've preset a lot of these hose clamps, so it's just to push it on. And the same goes for the where the hot air comes out. It's just push on. There's nothing tricky about that either. Okay, a couple of things about the internals of the unit. I think I've explained that I put on a bit of padding here just to protect it because it does shake around a bit. And obviously, let me just backtrack first of all. Obviously, you don't have to take the lid off to use the unit. It just gives you access to the internals and setting some of the stuff up initially and some of the little bits and pieces that I changed. This up here is the fuel tank. As I said, I think it's a 5 litre tank, so it's a reasonable size. It's not too bad. And this is the actual unit itself. Off to the side here is the fuel pump. And the fuel pump pumps obviously the fuel from the tank. Goes down via the back here, comes underneath, and you'll see there's a little hose that comes in underneath. And that there is where the fuel goes into the actual system itself. A couple of other things that I've done. I've raised it up on blocks. I just found some bits of wood that I had around at home, because when you put the exhaust pipe on without those raised blocks, the exhaust pipe was rubbing on the ground, so that's why I've actually gone and off and put some raised blocks here. So the unit itself, obviously, as I explained, fuel pump pumps it into the system. The faster you run the unit, or the faster the pump works, which can be controlled on the front, and I think I'll talk to that a little bit when we're at camp, the faster or the hotter the unit actually runs. So it pumps the fuel in, combustion occurs. I'm assuming, I don't 100% know, to be honest with you, but there's a fan in there, and the noise, or the really loud noise that you hear in the footage, it's the fan pumping it out. So obviously the faster the fan, the louder it goes. That's kind of how that works. I'll just quickly mention too, again, the kill switch that I put in. So at the back here, and Jen will get some close-ups of this, there's a power supply that comes in. So all I've done is just grab that power supply and routed it through a switch. As simple as that. There's nothing too tricky there. The only other modification that I've made is the air intake that comes from the back here. It actually runs through underneath and goes up underneath. As I said, sort of everything occurs underneath, because again, if you think about it, this unit here is what gets put usually into a caravan, and that's attached to the floor, so everything comes into the unit from the underneath, both air intake, exhaust and fuel, so it all comes in from the underside. So that's why everything sort of happens under here. It came with a bit of a dodgy sort of filter system. There's not really a filter system, but all I did was zip tie that to the back. So depending on how, if you do go out and purchase something like this, I just wanted to get that up out of the way rather than dangling down on the ground, I suppose. So I just zip tied it to the back of the unit. Just before someone puts something in the comments and makes a comment about it, although Cruise Master is well and truly here, we're not associated in any way, shape or form with Cruise Master. I think I got it free when I was working with HEMA, and I couldn't cut it straight through the middle of it, of course, so I cut it so the sign is there. But yeah, certainly not associated or sponsored by Cruise Master. So let me fire it up. You can see it's not, the boys call it the jet engine, because it does sound like a jet engine when it starts up. And we might fast forward bits and pieces because it does take a while. So I flick my kill switch on and you'll see the unit turns on. You want to get that, Jen? And then basically all I do is, so initially when the unit came, we had a process where we had to suck the fuel, because it was the initial, you have to prime the fuel to get through to the unit. And there's a process to go through doing that. But once it's up and running and it's done that process, all I simply do is turn it on, and you'll see it says on. The fan starts kicking in, as you can probably hear, and it sits in this state for probably about, I don't know, 10-15 seconds. And then after that, it fires up the diesel heater itself. You'll hear it. It starts powering up the fan a lot more, and then yeah, it goes from there. The units itself, they are very noisy. They do sound a bit like a jet plane. They're certainly not ridiculously loud like a generator or something like that. And they do smell a bit. The exhaust fumes, that you obviously don't stuck your face in front of the exhaust, but it does smell quite a fair amount. The heat that comes out, you can adjust the timing on how quickly the pump pushes the fuel through, and you'll hear the pump ticks. And a lot of people comment about the pump being annoying in caravans because they do tick, and you've got to put them in a location or just don't run them while you're trying to sleep. So there's that issue there. But other than that, it works really well. It does pump out a fair amount of heat. The way we store this, I built a big 12mm ply box that sits inside the camper trailer. It sits in there, and I strap it into that. So if there's any spill from a fuel perspective, and it's never done that, and we've travelled fairly extensively, we do go off-road with it, it's never been an issue, and it just sits there and does, you know, it's well contained within the trailer itself. So yeah, so it's starting to kick up now. You can hear the pump, that's the ticking, and you can see that exhaust starts coming out. And give it another couple of moments and it'll fire up proper. So you hear now that it's getting quite noisy. So just to give you an idea on the noise level, obviously I'm raising my voice. You can't hear the boys arguing around the front, so it is fairly noisy, but think of it like a really loud hairdryer is probably the noise level that you'll be having. So when it kicks up, this is the noise level it does. Once it gets to temperature, it'll quieten down again and be, you know, not a loud noise or something that's inconvenient to your neighbours. At least that's the way I view it anyway. So yeah, if you're keen that way, grab one of these things. They're not expensive. It's an option for you to deal with the heat if you're worried about, you know, being cold. I've read enough online that other people use these things, similar setup, and they actually use it in their hybrid caravans. So they actually haven't installed it. They didn't want to install it for whatever reason. So I know that people are doing that, and they just leave this under their annex and they run the ducting hose into their caravan through a vent or a hole or something like that. So yeah, they're a bit cumbersome, but I'm happy to drag it around and provide a bit of warmth when it's cold in the evenings or in the mornings. So yeah, I recommend them.